Welcome to Rise with AI, the podcast that spotlights trailblazers in e-learning and professional training, inspiring you to reach new heights, create impact, scale your vision, and empower others. I'm a host, and today we are joined by Andrew Chesnutt, CEO of Authority Forge, a company dedicated to helping entrepreneurs build their authority through powerful keynotes and podcasts. Over 20 years of experience in the e-learning space and 8 years of experience in founding two seven-figure businesses and a passion for storytelling, Andrew has helped entrepreneurs and seasoned speakers to elevate their presence and impact. Andrew, it's an honor to have you. Let's dive in with a fun question. You have described your love for presentations and nerding out over TEDx talks. So what's one TED talk or keynote that's inspired you to pursue this path, and why did it resonate so deeply?
The very first one that I fell in love with was one that was done by a lady named Nancy Duarte. Now, Nancy is one of the foremost experts on presentations. Her company, the Duarte organization, is just known as an expert. They're very, very good at taking high-level information, using storytelling to be able to help people to absorb it. So that was the very first TED Talk that I ever fell in love with. And there's a bunch more, way more to name here that I love, but that was one of the first ones. And what it taught me, up until this point, I was thinking that presentations had to be boring. There really wasn't another way to do it. And in the back of my head, I always thought that's not right. There's something wrong about this. Presentations shouldn't be boring. They shouldn't be about just putting a whole bunch of information into somebody and hoping that they get most of it. There's got to be another more engaging way to do it. And so I looked at both like regular corporate presentations, and then I looked at sales presentations. And regular corporate presentations usually are, here, let me give you my data. Sales presentations or buy my stuff, but there's not really anything in there that's working with the people around. And at this point, people are very numb to hearing the same messages and the same way of doing things. And so I looked at this TED Talk, learned her techniques, especially her SparkWire technique, and kind of put that into making presentations that weren't awful, that weren't hard to sit through, that weren't just buy my stuff, that actually left the audience in a state where they really knew that person, they liked you better, and they wanted to get to know more about you. And honestly, they trusted you and they wanted to buy something from you. So that's really what started it, is that one TED Talk. I listened to it about 9 years ago was when I first heard it. And it's one of those things where, I fell in love with this industry.
So Andrew, what's one story from your life that you would love to turn into a keynote? And also, why does it matter to you?
I have so many. One of the ones that I start my own kind of signature talk out with is a story about FDA compliance training. So I've been in the learning industry for 20 years at this point, and I was originally worked in mortgages in the finance world. Then I went on to medical. I remember being charged with creating this one course to help people who had made some mistakes, needed to go through a course to relearn specific parts, right? So it was basically meant for folks that hadn't quite, had not done something correctly and needed to get some additional training. And I get the specification doc, which is the thing that tells me how to write this course and what needs to be in it. And it's about 20 pages of bullet points. And I think my boss's boss, my boss's boss's boss, and like lawyers wrote this thing. It was awful. It truly was terrible. And so I was charged with making a course out of it. And so I did. Used every single technique in my book to make this thing even a little engaging, and ended up with 160 plus slide PowerPoint. And it was going to take around 2 hours to deploy. And the only way I can explain this thing accurately is saying it was academic assault. It's really simply meant to just check a box and say, yes, we put them back through this training and now they're fine. And they weren't going to learn anything. So of course, as soon as I have this thing done, the FDA auditor is on site doing an FDA audit, because they do regular audits of us, and wanted to see the specific piece of training. And so I walked into this conference room, and I want you to envision this with me. You're standing at the end of a table. Long table. There's people sitting around it, all with initials in their names, like VPs and C-suite and stuff like that. Okay. And at the end of this table is the FDA compliance, or the FDA auditor. And so I put this thing down, and this was a number of years ago. So it was a printout, and it hits the desk. It's 164 slides. It's not small. And he goes through it, and he looks through it, agonizing minutes. He's looking through this thing, looks up at me and asks me, is this meant to help them, or is this meant to punish them? And after a really brief cardiac event, I realized I never, ever, ever wanted to be in that situation again. I never wanted to create something that was so bad that an FDA auditor who really has no sense of humor asked me if it was meant to punish somebody. And at that moment, I realized there's got to be a better way to do this. There absolutely has to be a better way to transfer information from point A to point B. There has to be a way to work with us as humans to be able to take that information in and do it in a way that is engaging. And what I mean by engagement is, think about a Netflix show. I can sit and watch a Netflix show for 6 hours, watch something because I'm really involved in it. But sitting down and watching a lecture on, 13th century medieval art, unless you're really an art nerd, is not going to be that engaging. And I've set out on a way to make presentations and to make the way that we transfer information um, really work with our brains. And the number one way I learned to do that, stories. I want you to go back to when you were younger, really had a parent or parent figure tell you a story about something. And I want you to think back to that moment. What were you thinking of? And I want you to hear their voice tell that story. You probably can take yourself back to that moment because our brains are wired to learn that way. They're wired to learn through storytelling. Before we had any sort of written communication, it was verbal and it was passed down through generations via story because we knew that was the most effective way to teach people. But the other interesting thing that happens when you tell somebody a story, and this is what I use for when I'm doing sales presentations, is if you stand on stage and you tell somebody a story, specifically one that is authentic and vulnerable, what ends up happening is the audience's brainwaves sync with yours. We've actually taken a PhD, put helmets on people's heads and studied this, and your brainwaves synchronize with each other. You literally create a mastermind. And if I could take that power and be able to make it work, I would not only be helping companies to increase their revenue. And when I do a presentation with somebody, I have a number of people saying, hey, look, I closed more sales than I ever have. But that's not only the point. It's also, I have a whole bunch of people who want to get to know more about me. I have now created a bunch of rabid evangelists. I've now created people that know, like, and trust me. And it's not hard to do. So we tell stories. We love telling stories. Most people like to tell things. They may not be the greatest at telling stories, but they love doing it, and people love hearing it. And so being able to pull that into the way that I do things really has revolutionized the way that I work. I'm about to give a course in December, and I'm working on one. We're working with introverts. How do you sell as an introvert? You tell a story. Easiest way to do it.
So sounds like if you are actually able to be a good storyteller, that skills can apply to any type of person. And does that comes with practice, or do you feel that some people are just natural storytellers?
There are some people out there that are natural storytellers that can just tell a story no matter what. Other people need quite a bit of practice to get there. Everyone can generally tell a story, but I mean, there's different levels, but you don't even have to be very, very, very good at it in order to get the effect. You just have to, and there's techniques I can take people through to tell a better story, but you don't even have to be perfect at it. Walk through that story, rehearse it a few times, get the timing down, go through and look at bullet points, kind of write down all of the key points and then say, okay, this is the part. We're talking about AI. AI is really good at helping you to get all of that structured and using it to say, here's another description. Here's another way to look at it. And so again, just using that technique makes it easier. Now you have it because if somebody's telling a good story or not. If you're telling a good story or not. Okay, great. If you don't think it's good, go back, try again at it. But you know what that goal is, right?
And you actually work with a diverse clients, right? From landscapers to also seasoned speakers. What are one surprising moment that from coaching the client that actually made you realize the power of authority?
One client of mine recently, actually, Lori. So I've been doing this a little while, and so for me, I didn't think there was going to be anything that would surprise me. But she was scared to speak. She just was having a huge amount of trouble. Get her onto a Zoom call with somebody, she was fine, but it was getting her in front of other people because most of the people I work with at least have some speaking experience. Maybe not a lot, but something. So she gets onto stage and she absolutely crushes it. Like, she does such a good job at it. And she closed 4 clients that first time, like, that she gave it. 4. And it was simply because we took her through the backstory. She was more confident because she was able to do that, to tell the stories and tell stories about her past that helped her to be able to really get people to know her. And then, it went well. I was a little surprised that happened. I wasn't looking, I'm very happy it happened. It's one of those moments when I like to be wrong like that, that she does better than I thought. But it was really interesting that she really did very well on stage. And I was shocked at the fact at how well she did. And so anyway, yeah, that was a recent one.
Wow. So if we actually take the storytelling frameworks that you actually help your client through on the stage, does it also apply to day-to-day conversation and the effectiveness of that as well?
A little bit, yes. So you speak in different situations, and each situation has a slightly different way of doing things. So when I'm talking on stage as a keynote or as doing a signature talk, I'm going to speak in a different way than if I'm doing a sales presentation, than if I'm doing a podcast, than if I'm having a day-to-day like a Zoom call. And each one has a slightly different way of doing it. If I'm on stage doing a keynote, it's going to be a majority stories because I want to connect with people. It's more on a mindset basis. I'm going to tell stories about how I did well. I'm going to tell stories about how I completely messed something up and how I got out of it. That's really what the keynotes are for. These are more motivational talks. For sales, I want to tell a story that helps people understand why I got into what I am doing. Because we don't really do anything brand new. I don't know if there's anything 100% new. We're doing different versions of things. I'm a speaker. And I'll tell you, it's one of those things where I am not the only person that does this. And there are people out there that are very, very good at doing what I do. People want to learn from me. And so what I want to do is tell stories about why, like the FDA story. That's my story. And that's why I do what I do. So from a sales standpoint, that's one of the things you want to focus on is not just selling your features, it's selling your why. The features will come, but we want to focus on your. I'm helping another client of mine too right now. I've known him for years. They do corporate. They build corporations and like do the legal paperwork on forming entities and stuff like that. And I'm trying to rework things a little bit for him so that it's more story based versus let me sell you, these lists of features because everyone has the list of features, and if they don't, they're going to have it shortly after. I want to hear why because I want to build that. Day-to-day conversations are a little bit more different. It depends on the context. Sometimes we're going quickly and we'll say, I got this from blank and do really short storytelling. Sometimes we don't use it at all, just depending on the context itself. We use storytelling less in a day-to-day world because storytelling takes some time. It's not something you do immediately. It's not something you do very quickly. It's efficient, but it's not going to take a short amount of time. So day-to-day stuff, it's a little bit different. It's more, how was your day? Well, this person did this. It's a little bit shorter. I don't think it's quite as in detail. Yeah, we tend to not to go into details.
Just now you mentioned the main thing why storytelling is so effective is because of the engaging, right? You want to actually have that engagement with the audience and also to have that sort of connection. So since storytelling is the central of your work, what do you think is the root cause that why entrepreneurs actually struggle to craft compelling stories, and also what's the risk to their authority if they can't overcome this challenge?
So the biggest challenge that entrepreneurs have without using storytelling is they're in what I call scarcity mode. They just want to sell whatever they have. And they think that's the only way to do it. And they think that the only way to do is to say, well, I'm different from my competitors because of A, B, and C. And while that's not necessarily wrong, it doesn't get to the fact of then why should I buy you over your competitor? You're not telling me anything. I had this experience where I had somebody trying to sell a coaching program to me, and I get on. They say, okay, we had a wonderful conversation with this person, and then they're like, okay, go watch this video. And this video was basically reading off of bullet points saying, here is the features we sell. So they immediately killed the sale. Like I was not going to buy anything from them at this point because I'm like, oh, great. You're another coach. I've got 4 other friends with way better coaching programs than yours, and I'm not going to purchase yours. It's just not going to happen. Right. If you would have stuck with the story behind what you do and then focused on features. So story first, then features, there was a much higher chance I would have purchased. It was a decent investment. It was mid 5 figures. So it wasn't like it was a small investment. So it works for everything from smaller to big. It's what it is. Story would help to connect. Somebody I know wrote a book called Branding is Sex. Deb Gabber wrote this. She also wrote the book Irrational Loyalty. And if you've not read those 2 books, I very strongly recommend reading them. She is an absolute genius. And in her book, she goes through and says, she talks about cars. Cars have features. There are those of us that remember the days when roll-up windows were roll-up windows. You had to sit and roll them up, and if you had to roll up one in the back, you were going to walk outside the car and open up the door and roll it up, right? And then electric windows came along, and they were an add-on. That was a feature that they sold. We have electric power windows, but then think what happened. Every single car now has electric power windows. What's going to eventually happen if you start selling features is your competitors are now going to sell the same features. So if I focus on my features and why you need to buy from me, that's great, but there's 3 other places around there that are going to do the same thing. So why should I buy from you? This coaching program is a great idea. There's a million business coaching companies out there, a ton of them. You know, I have a friend of mine that's been trying to get me into one for years, and for me, it's like you don't differentiate with features because all of them have basically the same features. It's not going to make any difference. I want to hear why you're doing what you do because that's motivate me much more to purchase from you. And it sounds really woo woo. It sounds really out there, but I'll tell you, it works. It works really well. And I think that, so oftentimes we're in more, I want to sell. I want to sell. Here's my features rather than stepping back and saying there might be a better way to do this. There's a better way to connect with people, and that's through stories. And it's that connection, that authenticity, that connection is very important when it comes to selling. Again, like I said before, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. I don't know, like, and I know features. I don't like or trust them. I know, like, and trust stories. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah, what I'm actually hearing is really when people actually want to talk about their why, sometimes it could one of the root cause for entrepreneur to perhaps not do so well in this area is because they have to get vulnerable, and that is the key point to be able to connect with the prospect and get them to really buy in without asking for the buy.
And that's something, one of my first clients when I started doing this almost 9 years ago at this point, that was one of the things that we went through. I was rehearsing with him to try to get his signature talk down, his sales talk down. And we're talking life insurance. So it was about the dullest thing we possibly could do. So we needed a really strong backstory to keep people's interest because not a whole lot of people like talking about life insurance, right? And with him, he really did not want to tell people that his dad was an alcoholic. We wrote it in the script and I did it for a reason. And he did not want to do that. He didn't want to be that vulnerable. He was really ashamed of this. And I had to sit him down one day and go, look, this is not unique. A lot of people have this experience. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's something that's part of your story. And you need to tell this because people are going to connect with it. Because he wasn't somebody who naturally connected with people. I also remember telling him, stop screaming at me. He was really intense and he tried to just sell all this stuff and do all these things, all of this, because that's how he rolled. But for him, I had to tell him, stop screaming at me and you have to tell the story. And it helped. A lot of people really connected with that story, whether or not they said so. You could, if you were good at kind of judging people and seeing where they were, they really connected with that. And that was the one thing that really changed how he presented himself. And now he was more authentic. He was more vulnerable. You don't have to go trauma dumping on everyone. It doesn't mean that you have to go telling your entire life story and everything that happened. It's key parts. And this was one of the key parts. And it was a major turning point in his life that he needed to get out to use to develop. So yeah, it's one of those things. Vulnerability is really important.
I remember, I think in our era, perhaps just Steve Jobs' presentation and his keynote speech on stage. There's just something that everyone is just like looking forward to. And I'm just curious to know, is there any particular characteristics also of a good speaker, or any personality type? Because you also are right now guiding introverts through that journey, right? Or is this a misconception?
So that's one of the things we were talking before we got onto the show about, of course, that I'm writing for somebody that's going to help introverts. And really, honestly, I'm going to give you the entire course in 30 seconds or less. Use more stories. I think I did it in like 3 seconds. Really the big thing. And as somebody who's a recovering introvert, I get it. I really do. One of the things that introverts do is one of the things we do, and anyone does it, whether you're introverted or extroverted, there's two things that happen. First thing, as part of our kind of lizard brain, our old wiring that came from our ancestors and the cavemen, we didn't want to be seen, because if there's a saber-toothed tiger strolling around looking for dinner, I don't want to put a dinner flag up and make myself seen. That's a threat. It can negatively affect our safety. So it was safer for us not to be seen. This is where that fear of public speaking comes from. That's one of them. It's embedded in our nature to not want to be seen, so that we are not a mark for something, so that we won't be eaten. So the second part is judgment. We think that people in the audience are going to judge us. Think about the last time you went and gave any sort of a talk, whatever it was. Think about what you thought of. Oh, they're going to judge me. Who am I to be up there talking about this? There's imposter syndrome as part of this. But you're worried about being judged by these people. And it happens to the best of us too. I can remember being I was giving a talk on what I do. It was really quick. Like I was a sponsor for an event and had to go up and talk. And I get in front of this group of people. There's about a couple hundred people on there. And this is not a group. I'm used to speaking in front of a few hundred people. It's not like this was something that was weird. And I get up there and in the back of the room, I see one of my mentors, somebody I have a massive amount of respect for and a very, very talented speaker, has been doing this a long time. And I absolutely get into my head, and I'll tell you, I am not happy with how that talk went. No matter every single coping mechanism I had, I was trying because I saw him just as I'm stepping on stage, and it just got into my head, and it did not go well. I mean, I could recover eventually because I've got, I've been doing this long enough that I can, that I did it, but that was hard. So I want to use that story to tell you, you're not the only one. We all get it. We all get it. But the first part though is understanding that it's that wiring. The second part is that fear of being judged, and all of us get it. And I want people to understand, especially introverts, that um, it's that fear of judgment is much bigger in your head than it is in somebody else, than it is an actual problem. And so the thing I always tell people, think about it. You're about to do something that most people are terrified of. Public speaking is the number one fear of people. Okay. So you're about to go there and take on the number one fear of people. And if there was anyone in that audience that wants to judge you, great. They can step up there and do what you're about to do. I invite them to come up and do it, and they're not going to take me up on it. You're doing something that most people can't. And understand it. And that gives you a lot of power because now it levels the playing field. It's not about you being judged. Great. You want to judge me? You come up here and do this. Totally changes the entire world, you know? And so now you're coming at this not from a fear-based place, but you're coming at it from, let me go serve this audience. Let me help them. Let me spread that piece of information that I have that could positively affect their lives. And so that's it. And introverts, specifically introverts, making sure that you have some time in a green room somewhere beforehand just to kind of regroup yourself. Make sure the day before you're not running out into massive parties. Make sure you're um, managing your energy, especially for introverts. There's a lot of very famous speakers that are introverts. So this isn't, you can do it. You absolutely have the ability. It's just understanding, Tony Robbins is relatively introverted. A lot of people don't know that about him, but he's pretty introverted. And what he does is he's got a thing that he goes through and does when he's going to go out and speak. He's got a whole like process he does beforehand to make sure that he can do it. So yeah, I would just think about that.
Very interesting. So really turning the fear and the scarcity mindset into value-based mindset. So turning the lens outwards to sharing, right, the message that you have a more important message than your imaginary fear alone.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
And you have a message to share, and you can do a lot of good with that message, and it needs to be shared.
So I want to touch a little bit on your entrepreneurship journey so far because you have such a amazing track record, scaling 2 businesses to 7 figures, and now you just transited into a solopreneur. I mean, also crafting your new mission ahead, right? You have described being in the sub phase of entrepreneurship. Can you actually share a little bit? Yeah, what is the biggest obstacles that you're actually facing with personal brand and visibility?
How long do you have? How much time do we have? So I was talking with a good friend of mine the other day, Troy, and Troy's been founding companies for 32 years, and he's going through the same phase as well. There's this first thing that happens when you're trying to figure out your marketing, you're trying to figure out how your product's going to be positioned, and you're trying to figure out your systems behind it, and you're trying to figure out staffing, and you're trying to figure out this, and you're basically chief everything officer. It's every company starts this way. I don't care if you've been doing this 1 year or 30. This is the process that starts at first, and it's really difficult. And I see it as the admission to getting. This is the admission fee to getting to the place I want to get to. And if you look at it that way, it makes it a little bit easier to go through, but it's difficult for everyone. And so I would say understanding that entrepreneurship is basically continually being kicked down, ending back up and saying, I'm not done yet. That basically sums it up as short as, kind of concisely as possible is I'm not done yet. That is the number one thing that really helps entrepreneurs to be successful is tenacity. Keep going. Good friend and mentor of mine, and one of the co-founders of the 2 companies that the CEO of the 2 companies that we founded said, probably the wisest words I've ever heard. And that is, the only way to fail is to quit. Everything else is just a problem that needs a solution. That, and understanding that when you're in that moment, because that's part of being an entrepreneur, is sitting up at 2 o'clock in the morning with your head in your hands going, I have no idea what to do next, and I have to do something, and I have no idea where I'm going. That's part of this. That's part of what this is. It's also the greatest personal development story. I mean, I don't care what sort of personal development programs you have. Entrepreneurship is probably the best one. It's the hardest. If you come in with problems, you're going to have to deal with them. So that's the other part of it. But that first part, really, personal development is a huge part. You're going to have to do a lot of personal development. If you have any things in your life, any demons that you're not looking at, that you're not dealing with, you're going to be forced to deal with them. And so personal development, time to yourself. There's a voice in your head that will help guide you, but it only speaks when you're quiet. And that's really hard during that first period. So time to yourself, 1 day a week, whatever it happens to be, whatever time you can get, listening to that inner voice, that's going to help you guide and understand the only way you can fail is to quit. So those are the pieces of information I can give to any person who starts.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, there's just one way to go. It's just like pushing up a boulder, and if you just quit and let it go, you'll crash. Otherwise, you might reach the top, but you have to keep going. And
you don't know exactly. And sometimes you're going to go over a bump and have no idea how to get that boulder over it, and you're going to have to figure out how to make that work, and you will. Might take some time, but you will, or there's times when it's going to start rolling backwards and you're saying a whole bunch of swear words and just trying to keep things from not catching on fire. But it's going to work. You're going to figure out a way to make it work. Entrepreneurs are some of the most resilient people on the face of the planet. I have a great deal of respect for my brother and sister entrepreneurs because we're crazy enough to change the world and we have the tenacity to do it. And I think it's something that's really, that is going to positively impact the world.
I agree. So is your mantra right now for yourself, it will work?
Mm-hmm. Yep. It'll work out. Everything will work out. Yep.
Yeah, I feel like I have a similar mantra. Yeah, it's just, it will work out. Whatever it happens, it will work out. Love that.
So I also want to put a framework on this. And this is something that entrepreneurship taught me. I've learned a ton of lessons from entrepreneurship. But the one is, no matter what happens, I'm going to figure out how to make it go right. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Not 100% sure what the path is. Probably going to have to pivot a bunch of times, but I'm going to figure it out. And I want you to think about that. If you're in a regular corporate job and you're in the 9 to 5, you're stuck with an employer, and are you going to be able to figure stuff out? Well, kind of. But if the employer lays you off, what are you going to do? You're going to figure it out. You're going to figure out how to move forward. And entrepreneurship is doing that every day, not only when we get laid off, but there's a certain level of freedom that comes from that too. I know a lot of times people see entrepreneurs being able to say, hey, I have, hey, look, they're able to take this, cruise. I have this friend of mine that's going to Paris right now, and that's where they're working from. And it's like, oh, that must be nice. Well, you didn't see the back work that had to work there. But that's what this admission fee buys me. Going through this building phase where everything isn't working out, you're just putting out fires is all you do. That gets you. But anyway, there's an amount of freedom to it because no matter what's going to happen. Okay, I have a Jeep. Let's say something happens to that. Now, Jeep stands for just empty every pocket because these things are very expensive to get fixed. So I'm always worried about that. But what happens if something happens and the front end falls off? Okay, I allow myself a little bit of time to just be like, oh, this sucks. I will figure out a way to make it work. And there is a huge amount of power to that. I will figure out how to fix this.
I love that. Thank you so much for just giving entrepreneurs different lens to look at it, because I think so far we don't have any other choice but to really just keep on moving and having that faith, right? So in terms, you mentioned about systems and tools as perhaps one of the more complicated things, right, that we have to really do with at the starting phase. What is one specific tool or any systems that actually help you to accelerate your business and also help with your client work?
Any system you can get down when you first start. Don't get locked into systems. So systems are a version of analysis paralysis, where I'll start this as soon as everything's right. I'll start this as soon as my go high level is just right, and then 3 years later you haven't done anything with it. Everyone really focuses on systems. Systems are very good. but systems are not something you use in front. Google Docs are great. Spreadsheets are fine as long as you're getting to your end goal and you're keeping an eye on that end goal. When you start to hit like 500, $700,000 a year in revenue, that's when you start to look at systems because now you're going into a new phase in your company. You're not just a startup, you're actually turning into a company. And at that phase is when you start looking at like actually operating systems and actually putting people in their lanes and that. But when you first start off, it's your job title is yes, whatever has to be done right now. I don't care if you're the CEO sweeping floors, you're going to figure it out. You got to start, everyone kind of jumps in. So as far as systems, try to get everything written down somewhere. Again, Google Docs, spreadsheet, whatever it is, right now. I like the Google tools just because I can collaborate and send links to somebody and everyone can work on the same spreadsheet, stuff like that. But just get it somewhere, and whatever's going to work. Worry about the process later. So, but those first while, your number one and I've messed this up. So I'm teaching from experience here. The number one thing you need to do when your company first gets going, cash flow and sales. That is, everything should go towards sales, period. Get money flowing in first. I don't care if you're the only person selling and you're writing your orders in a book on a piece of paper, that's fine. Get the sales have to come first. That revenue has to come first because that's going to allow you to pay for the systems that you're going to need later.
So true. And in the current phase of your business right now, what are some of the strategies that you will actually be implementing to grow your client base?
Right now, it's mostly referral based, just because that's the fastest way to get up and going is referral using a network. I am a very strong believer in your network is your net worth. So I spend a lot of time making friends because I do cool stuff with my friends is how I like to do business, and so and I think that we need to really focus on people in the industry. This isn't just that person that can hook me up with something. It's that friend of mine who also happens to know somebody who can help. The relationship has to be built first, and they have to be respected. But um, as far as that, yeah. So networking right now is my thing. Using that referral network, marketing is something that I'm getting into. It's not anything I'm good at, but I'm in build phase right now. This is business number 3. So fortunately, I know the formula. However, still got to go through it. But so marketing is another thing too, getting your name out there. And that's part of what we do too with the authority side of things is getting clear on your product. What do you do? Who do you serve? And what pain points do you hit? And that's part of what I help people to do is to sit down and say, okay, and you're going to tweak that. It's not something that's like, you put in a couple of variables into an equation and pop out exactly what your marketing is going to be. It's half art, half science, half guessing. And that's really what product placement is. There's some science behind it, and there's some ways to do it right and some ways to do it wrong. But it's also what pain points do you need to hit, and the market is always changing. So it's always a little bit different. So with my business, that's where I'm at right now is just building that authority side of things. And so that's why I've done it before. So I'm just using the same processes we did previously. And I also now help people to do it as well and kind of be like, hey, let's help get your message clear. Let's help understand where people's pain points are. Like, what are you solving? What problem are you solving for them? And also let's know about your story. Why are you doing what you do? So like Simon Sinek says, start with why. Yep.
And on that note, what is actually your vision for the Authority Forge in the next 6 to 12 months?
So what I'm doing, I'm starting right now with sales presentations because it hits a really good. I love doing them. I like doing them the way that I do them because they're effective. But it's also just a fun point. But it's also a revenue driver. Again, focus on revenue. I know I'm really good at this. I've been doing it for years, and I know exactly how to do it. I've got how I do things in the back of my head. So focusing on that. I also do TED Talks. I'm actually going to be working on one here in a little bit. And so focus on what I'm good at, that lane. I'm going to be adding on some additional stuff as well, probably in the future, like podcasts and things like that too, just to make sure that we get that going. I like podcasts as another way to give information. It's more conversational than a standard talk. So if you go up and give a signature talk, you're talking at people. There might be some interaction, but it's not very interactive. People will see you in a different light in a podcast. So it's a different communication style. And so I want to bring that into it as well. So I do it to some extent for right now, but we're really going to do a push later on. I want to focus on one thing first. Yeah. We're going to be helping a bunch of people in 6 months.
Yes, you mentioned about providing value, right? So help as much people as you can, provide value as much as you can, and then that's your one main goal. Okay, awesome. And Andrew, I actually prepared 3 rapid questions for you. So just answer with any first answer, right, that came into your mind. Are you ready for that?
I am ready.
All right. Question number 1. What's one quick tip for entrepreneurs to start building their authority today?
Clarity. Clarify your message, not to you, to your audience.
Question 2. If you could collaborate with any thought leader or speaker, who would it be?
Nancy Duarte. I am such a fan of hers. If she called me up, like, I've got this project, I would drop everything. Again, I really appreciate what she does and how much she's revolutionized the presentation and speaking industry. So, Nancy, if you're out there, you want to be on a podcast?
Yes, you know where to look for. Andrew is here. And last question. What's one book or resource you recommend for mastering public speaking or authority building?
Story Selling by Dan Clark. I have a huge amount of respect for Dan. I've known Dan for years, and he is an amazing speaker as well. He has been for 40 years, and that book really helped me out a lot in the beginning. So I would strongly recommend that one. Talk Like Ted is the other one that's a really good book to do too. So I'll double dip on that one.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Andrew. And where can people find you online?
You can go to theauthorityforge.com to take a look at us. We are also on Instagram, Facebook, as well as on LinkedIn. You can go take a look and go take a look at us and see what we're all about.
Awesome. All the links will be provided in the description below. So if any one of you guys want to connect with Andrew, go and click on the links on the description. So that's all for today's episode of Rise with AI. A huge thank you to Andrew Chesnutt for sharing his insights on building authority through keynotes and podcasts. Listeners, if this episode inspired you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe for more conversations with leaders in e-learning and professional training. Until next time, keep reaching, impacting, scaling, and empowering. See you guys soon.